So one of the most frustrating parts of being an early stage founder, because I've been there, is the fact that advice is all over the place. One person will tell you to bootstrap, another one says raise, another person says like crowdfunding is the best thing, smartest thing ever. And another one will say never crowdfund. Someone says get a loan. VCs are great, angels are the best. You literally get conflicting advice 10 times a day. And the reality is most likely you're not looking for more opinions. You just want to know what makes sense for your business, which is really hard to get from someone who doesn't know your business. So when you're looking online or LinkedIn or podcasts or whatever, you're getting all this advice, but none of it is with the context of someone understanding where you're at personally, what your personal life goals are, what your business goals are, where you're at financially. I mean, there's so many different variables. What kind of product you have, what kind of business you have, what kind of support you have. There are so many variables that need to be taken into account before you're able to look at that. So you need to be able to decide that yourself. And that in itself can be tricky. I totally get it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We are going to kind of go through a little mini framework that you can use to try to figure out what is the best strategy for you. And I want to thank Caitlin from LinkedIn because she commented on one of my posts this week. This was her question, and it is so true. And I don't think she's alone. I know I have felt that way just in general these days. There's so much content out there. There's so many opinions. Anything I'm researching, anything down to even like health stuff, right? My son bought a 3D printer and I'm researching, what's the deal with all the plastic. And anyway, I settled on not having it in the house because I felt like there was microplastic flying around. But just even everyday simple things we're researching, there is so much conflicting advice and opinions out there. So this is no different. And this is a huge decision. How you fund your company is a very big decision because it comes with all different types of expectations, and it can honestly set the course of your career and path and company. So it really is an important decision. The real question is not, again, which funding path is best. It's which funding path is best for you and your business at this stage, given your goals and given your constraints. That's the question you want to be asking. So here is where I suggest that you start first. First, you want to define the job of money. So before you look at any funding option out there, you want to ask yourself, like, what do I need this money to do? Money is a tool. I totally believe that. There's so much emotion we attach to money, but it really is a tool. The more of it often lets you do more. But we all know the stories of like the pro basketball player who, got his X number of million and then was broke 2 years later, right? So what you do with money is honestly way, way, way more important than how much you get. And the same thing applies to startup capital. So what do you need the money for? Do you need it to build a prototype? Do you need it to buy inventory? Do you need to hire support? Do you need to fund, marketing? Now, I say that and really like, if you're really, really early stage, funding marketing is probably not what you should be using your money for unless you've already gotten a really highly proven concept and kind of funnel that's working or conversion method that's working. But typically, if you're early stage, if you're trying to figure out which way you're going, the funding you're bringing in should really be used to hit bigger milestones like a proof of concept, developing, finalizing your product, generating sell-through, what metrics are you going to determine once you have that funding? Where will you be a year from now? So just hiring a team is not really enough. What is that team going to get you? That's what you want to dig into. So if you don't know the job of the capital that you're bringing in, then every funding path starts to sound just kind of equally possible and equally confusing. So again, define the purpose. And with that, you'll really be able to narrow in on how much you need. I see so many pitch decks that say, I need 500,000 or I need 2 million. I literally did the same thing. And then I started to figure out exactly what I needed the money for, and I was able to stage it out in the right way that made sense for my company. So you want to figure out how much you need. And in order to do that, you need to figure out what it's going to be used for. So, what specific outcome will that amount create, and then work backwards. It should be solving a problem. It shouldn't just be money to go, in the bank account. And it definitely shouldn't be used to just kind of reduce anxiety for a few minutes, because believe me, it will not go away with more funding. So the next thing you want to do is kind of use this 4-part filter I'm going to give you. The first one is, does this funding option make sense for my business model? So for example, I had a consumer product good, and I had licensing requirements, legal barriers that I had to overcome before I could sell a single product. It was alcohol. It's easier now. There's all kinds of ways to do it. But when I started, it was not doable without the licensing that I needed. So bootstrapping was not an option for me. It just didn't work with my business model. But it might work for you. If bootstrapping works for your business model, by all means, do that as long as you can, right? So how long have you been doing that? If you have a high growth, scalable startup, then equity is probably the way to go. You're going to have an easier time raising funding than if you have something that is going to be very slow growth with no real exit path. Okay. So again, what space you're in, what industry you're in, all of that definitely matters. If you're building a profitable service business or, a more niche company, giving up ownership might be a really terrible trade, because maybe you can do it on your own. You don't need to give up control and ownership. So what is your business model, and what types of companies with a similar business model have used these various strategies? So again, there's so many tech VCs out there, and they're all shouting from the rooftops on VC, early stage. That does not make sense for like 9 out of 10 or 99 out of 100 consumer product companies early stage, especially if you're pre-revenue, right? So you really need to understand who's giving the advice. And if it's not in your industry, it very well might not make sense for you. So business fit, that's the first filter. Second filter, stage fit. So are you actually at the right stage for this type of funding? So if you have bootstrapping, if you have an option is private loans, angel investors, VCs, friends and family, what stage are you at? If you're pre-revenue, you are probably not going to a VC unless you are in some crazy growth space, which right now is mostly like AI stuff. If you're not AI or some other crazy growth space, or you have some, protected IP technology, then raising money from a VC is probably not even an option for you. So don't even bother approaching them. Total waste of time. So what stage are you at, and what stage do, these different methods typically make sense for? You want to figure that out. If you already have traction, you're going to have more options. If you don't, if you don't have any traction, you don't have any sales, you're probably looking at friends and family money. And even then, you still want to try to figure out what that money is going to be used for before you take it. The third filter, this is a big one, risk fit. Can you handle the pressure to, that's attached to money, the money you're going to bring in? So big angel investors, especially VCs, there is a different level of pressure there than if you're bootstrapping or, getting out a business loan or friends and family. Debt, however, creates massive repayment pressure. So if an angel investor invests in you, you don't necessarily have to pay that back. You should not put terms in place that require you to pay it back. Those people are there. They're willing to take an early risk. They have an appetite for that level of risk of the stage that you're at, and they want to be involved and they want to support and all those good things. If you go out and take a business loan, and people do this, and I highly recommend you don't, and you attach a personal guarantee to it, that is when people lose their homes, when their business doesn't work out. Okay. So debt creates repayment pressure. What kind of position are you in? Do you want to take on that pressure? Equity creates ownership pressure, right? So you're going to be getting whittled down on your ownership. This happened to me. And all of a sudden you're stressing out going, oh my God, I'm not going to own any of my company anymore, like hardly anything. It's horrible. Crowdfunding, that creates delivery pressure. You are putting it out there to the world. You better hustle to make it a splash, right? Because otherwise it can flop pretty easily. So what kind of risk and pressure are you comfortable with? Even bootstrapping, there's time, there's energy pressure attached to it. It's not easy. Bootstrapping is not easy. Like, do you have resources to cover you personally? That can be a lot of pressure. So every funding source has a cost. And what's your appetite for risk? And where do you feel comfortable? It's okay to be uncomfortable and go outside your comfort zone. We're all doing that as entrepreneurs all the time in general, but you want to try to find a risk fit that matches up for you. So that's the third filter. The fourth filter, and I actually think this one is the most important, and I made this mistake, and I wish somebody had shook me in the beginning and told me this one. The fourth filter is the goal fit. So does this type of funding support the kind of business and the kind of life that you actually want to live? Do you want to control your company? Do you want to move super fast? And if so, why? Right? Maybe that's in your personality, or, is it really not? And you just feel like you're supposed to go fast. Freedom. So when I was running my company for 9 years, I had zero freedom. Zero. I worked 16-hour days. I worked 7 days a week. I missed my friends' weddings and baby showers. It was wearing on my relationships. I realized too late that that was not the life. That's not who I am. I look at someone like Mark Cuban. I'm like, dude, he is built differently than I am. And neither is right or wrong. Okay. That is what so much pressure is put on us, that we are only successful if we reach billionaire status, which is absolutely ridiculous. So small tangent here. I just got back from Fiji 2 days ago. I'm a bit jet lagged. And we spent, 8 days on an island, Tavayuni in Fiji. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. If you've not been to Fiji and you're dying to go, highly recommend it. 50% of the island is indigenous. And it's so cool to just see these little villages. We hiked 3 hours to this waterfall, and we passed these villages that literally don't have a road to get to them. And they have no electricity. Each village has a generator from 5 to 9 p.m. That's it. And these people are genuinely super happy. It's crazy, right? They're not sitting there plopping in front of a TV at 5 p.m. These villages are like on the most pristine ocean. They have such a deep connection to nature. So our society here, like, I love money. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely do. It allows us to do amazing things, like go to Fiji. And, I spent 8 weeks this year on vacation and traveling, and I love traveling. But it isn't everything. So I came to the realization in my company that that's not what personally made me happy. Chasing this big dollar amount, I did it, and I did it because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And then once I had investors involved, I realized, I've got to make this happen. And now I'm chasing someone else's goal that really didn't align with my personal goals in life. So I transitioned to a company that gives me way more freedom, still have plenty of financial success, growing my net worth, doing all the things I want to do financially, but I work like 20 hours a week, and I get to do things like outrigger. I spend 6 hours a week on the ocean. I travel with my family. I pick my son up from school. My husband and I actually get to do things together. So what do you want your life to look like? It is so, so, so important. There is no better, right, wrong. Everyone in the media, especially VCs. I've literally heard a VC say, you are a failure if you don't reach billionaire status. And I'm just like, oh my God, that is so disgusting on so many levels. So I don't know. I am probably preaching to the wrong crowd about this, but I know there are some people out there who don't actually care enough about reaching billionaire status to go down the path it takes to get there. There's absolutely nothing wrong if you do want to go down that path. I am all for that also. Props to you. Go for it. But it is not the only path to success. So I really suggest you do some like deeper thinking about what do you want your life to look like 5 to 10 years from now. And you know, it depends on where you're at in your life too. If you're in your 20s, yeah, give it 5 to 10 years and see where it goes. And if it doesn't go where you want it to, you pivot. And if it does, sweet, that's a great time. You don't have a lot of, responsibilities. If you don't have kids yet, if you don't want kids, if you're not married, whatever. It depends on where you're at in your life, right? And what your, again, tolerance for risk is. So that's the fourth filter. I think it's the most important one is goal fit. If you care about freedom, if you care about time, if you care about all those things, bootstrapping is probably going to be a better fit for you. But if you're like, whatever, I've got no responsibilities, I've got no ties, this is my life mission, I am going to change the world in a huge way, then go for it. Chase the big money, make it happen. But just know what you want and what is right for you, and don't follow what other people are telling you success should be. So I think that is really, really important, because otherwise that is where regret kicks in and you don't want to be there. So, okay, let me give you an example here. So after those 4 filters, let's apply those to, for example, crowdfunding, right? So you've probably heard crowdfunding is a great way, to validate demand. But also, don't crowdfund unless you already have an audience, a strong offer, a real launch plan, all that stuff. So you've heard both can be true. So crowdfunding may be a fit for you if your product is easy to understand, if there's a strong customer appeal, if you can tell a compelling story, if you have an audience or a really solid plan on how to reach one, and you can actually fulfill what you're selling, then crowdfunding might be a good fit. There's a guy here in Santa Barbara. He had a crazy successful crowdfunding campaign to launch. I got to get him on the podcast. I'm going to reach out to him, but it's totally, people do it. It can be, a really great way to go. However, it may not be a fit if your offer's too complex, if your audience isn't clear, if you don't have enough proof yet or attention, or if you're not operationally ready to deliver. That totally happens, unfortunately. So the question is not, is crowdfunding good or bad? The better question is crowdfunding a fit for my business and me right now? So that question cuts through so much of the noise out there. So that's what you want to ask yourself. Do that same thing with all of the options, and that will really help you out. So I think a lot of founders, they're saying they need funding, but what they actually need first is really kind of a decision-making framework to figure out what funding they need. Because once you have that, you're able to kind of cut through the noise, stop chasing every opinion, stop treating every post, podcast, or hot take like it should become your strategy, which is so easy to do. You want to start evaluating the advice that you're seeing, not just absorbing it. That is a really important distinction, and it's a huge shift, because the goal is not to collect more information. We all have so much information at our fingertips. The goal is to build enough clarity that you can move forward with a path confidently, because it's no matter which path you take, it's going to take dedication. If you crowdfund, you need to be really dedicated to execute that well. If you're bootstrapping, you need to be hyper focused on your finances and lean and really make sure you're not wasting a single dime. If you're going after angel investors, you need to have the metrics that they're looking for and put a lot of effort into networking to find the person that is a good fit for you and can ideally bring more than money also. And if you do feel like you're ready for VCs and that's the path you want to go, you are going to have to talk to a lot of VCs. I had a podcast interview with a guy who did 160 meetings in 30 days to raise his seed round from VCs. So all of these have their own challenge and required dedication. But if you can find the one that's right for you and then set your eyes on that and really focus on executing, it's going to take time no matter what path you go down, but you better start. Your chances of success are a lot higher if you at least start on the right path to begin with. So again, final takeaway, if you are overwhelmed by conflicting advice out there, like Caitlin, and I'm sure a lot of people, and myself included, when I'm researching certain things, here is what I want you to remember. The confusion is usually not because anything is bad advice. It's just missing the context like we talked about. So use that filter look at, the advice that you're reading. Is it a business fit? Is it a stage fit? Is it a risk fit? And is it a goal fit? And using those 4 filters, you should be able to narrow down into what the best strategy is for you. And that's how you'll be able to stop asking, why is everybody saying different things, and really focus on what makes sense for you and your business. So if this episode helped you out, share it with somebody you know that is starting a company, because chances are they are trying to figure out at some point how the heck they're going to fund it. Every entrepreneur goes through it. Funding is a tool. It's a reality. Embrace it. Money is wonderful. It allows us to do so many things, but it is not everything. So there's all kinds of options, and I believe there's a will. If there's a will, there's a way. So do me a favor, go onto the podcast, leave a review, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, whatever channel you're at, and we'll see you on the next one.